Hey there YouTube, this is Mr.Lubufu and welcome back to another episode of MTG Mastery. Here we are. If you have not seen the previous 3 episodes of the lore, I'm linking them right now. I'm being super serious, guys. We've reached the dramatic finale, so if you don't know the story, haven't watched the previous episodes, or in any way are not familiar with what happens in the previous 3 blocks, this is your opportunity to do so. Massive spoilers if you haven't, but I've been covering this on a weekly basis, so, all the thing is up to you. Anyway, they all gone? Great. Those of you that are now up to date, grab your tissue boxes and your stuffed penguins all, because things are about to get all George R.R. Martin in here. Our story continues with the Weatherlight, now flying over Benalia, when suddenly portals begin to open in the sky, through which a Phyrexian armada is coming. The invasion has finally come. The crew manages to close some portals and then head to Benalia City to warn the people there, but they're thrown into jail alongside a mysterious blind seer. They escape along with the seer and destroy many Phyrexians and liberate a number of prisoners from the Atravac mounds to help fight against the invaders, but the overall battle fares badly. The Phyrexians kill everyone in Benalia City, decimate Saren and Metathran armies sent by Urza, and the crew only barely survives an encounter with the leader of the invasion, Sabo Tavok. Hannah is even injured during this battle. When the wound becomes infected, Orym diagnoses Hannah with the Phyrexian plague. On Teleria, Baron and Urza go into a slow time bubble from which they bring the genetically engineered generals for their Metathran armies, Thaddeus and Agnate. They head for the caves of Koilos, where Tavok has made her headquarters, and where the only permanent portal between Phyrexia and Dominaria lies. They attack the place, but it quickly turns into a siege, with neither side being able to turn the tides of battle to its favor. The only battle that really goes well for the defenders is that in Yavimaya. Aided by the sea creatures from the surrounding seas, newly emerged Kavu, and the nature spirit Multani, the Phyrexians there are killed and resurrected as woodsmen that fight for the forest. In Llanowar, Eladamri, Lincivi, and Takara try to warn the people about the coming danger, but the elves won't listen to them until the plague bombs begin to drop from the sky. Takara begins to show signs of illness, having contracted the Phyrexian plague from being imprisoned in the Phyrexian stronghold for so long. She risks her life to save as many elves as possible, only to be hit by a Phyrexian bomb and is instantly killed. The others lead the survivors into the shelter of the Dream Halls. These caves bring the refugees' nightmares alive, but Eladamri manages to soothe them and keep them safe. In Zalfir, the battle is going well, but Teferi knows it won't last long. He and Urza shut down the Phyrexian portals above the country, but Teferi decides to use the energy released in this way to phase out his homeland. Urza is furious about Teferi choosing fleeing over fighting, and becomes even more enraged when Teferi also phases out part of Shiv. Meanwhile, the Blind Seer has been showing up and disappearing among the Weatherlight crew, giving advice when needed. He sends them to Llanowar, where they shut down the portals that drop the plague bombs on the forest. They make a short plane shift to Wrath, the staging ground of the invasion, where they capture a number of Phyrexians. Orym is able to research their immunity to the plague and manages to devise a serum that stops it from spreading. The crew is made immune, but it's too late to do anything for Hannah. The Weatherlight lands, and the group is reunited with Eladamri, Lincivi, and even Multani. Eladamri tells the crew about the power of the Dream Halls to bring dreams to life, and they try to use it to cure Hannah. However, because she's Hannah, she doesn't believe in the dreams, thus remaining ill. On other fronts, the battle continues to fare badly. On Urborg, Baron's forces are almost completely defeated, only to be saved by the undead hordes of a necromancer. At Koilos, Thaddeus is captured by Tavok and dissected alive. The blind seer sends the Weatherlight to Koilos so Eladamri can replace the fallen Metathran general. The elf must fight a duel with Agnate to convince the genetically engineered warriors he is worthy of leading them, but during the duel, tragedy strikes. Hannah succumbs to the Phyrexian plague and dies. Urza, in the meantime, assembles even greater defenders for Dominaria. He had planned for himself and 8 other planeswalkers: Taser, Freyalise, Tevish Zat, Lord Windgrace, Commander Guff, Bolivar, Parcher, and Teferi to join him using his Titan engines to turn the tide at Koilos and the war. His plans are slightly altered as Taser's adoptive daughter Daria replaces Teferi, who fled, and Freyalise insists that Christina of the Woods comes along, replacing Tevish Zat, but Urza insists he needs Zat and replaces Parcher instead. They travel to Teleria to train with the engines in a fast time bubble, but the gathering of the Planeswalkers draws the Phyrexians to the island, so they are forced to abandon it, traveling to Koilos to plan for the great battle. Urza begins to call back forces from Urborg to fight on Koilos. Baron realizes that the Swamp Island will be lost this way, and travels to Urza to ask for reinforcements. Urza simply tells him he can't spare any and that Urborg must fall so Koilos can be saved. Baron is annoyed, but can't do anything to change Urza's mind, so he decides to rest for a while, and insists on seeing his daughter. His daughter being Hannah. Urza tells him Hannah has been dead for 2 weeks. When Baron asks why Urza didn't tell him, the Planeswalker replied that Baron's concentration was needed to save Urborg. Furious with Urza, Baron returns to Teleria with the intention of burying his daughter next to her mother. Upon returning to his island home, Baron discovered that the Phyrexians discovered the location of Urza's base of operations. Baron cast a spell he had vowed never to cast, destroying the island, the Phyrexians, the Academy, and himself in the process. Then the final battle at Koilos begins. Titan engines and coalition forces fight the Phyrexians, but more keep coming through the portal. The Weatherlight crew enter the caves to shut it down, but they are also overcome with Phyrexian forces. Tavok uses Gerard's grief over Hannah's death to gain control of his mind, and Agnate is emotionally shattered when he finds the remains of the still-breathing Thaddeus, whom he chooses to mercy kill. But then Karn gives up his oath of pacifism, distracting Tavok long enough for Gerard to break free, and for Squee to pass his commander a sword. Gerard and Karn wound Tavok grievously, and the Phyrexian only barely manages to flee through the portal before Gerard closes it. The remaining forces then round up the leftover Phyrexians. The blind seer shows up again, revealing himself as Urza. He and Gerard destroy the portal forever and tell the coalition army the battle is over. A great feast is arranged to celebrate this victory, but only a few days later, something strange begins happening in the sky. Wrath begins to merge with Dominaria, transplanting all Phyrexian forces from one plane to the other in a few days. The Wrathy overlay begins while the coalition forces are still recovering from the battle at Koilos. The 9 Planeswalker Urza gathered to transport the troops to The Wrathy overlay begins while the coalition forces are still recovering from the battle at Koilos. The 9 Planeswalkers Urza gathered transport the troops to various strategically important locations. Urza takes the Weatherlight and the Metathran forces to Urborg, where the stronghold now lies. Krovax, the leader of the invasion, decides to cannibalize Savo Tavok for her failures. Eladamri, Lincivi, and their forces are brought to Keld by Freyalise, where they join forces with the Sky Shroud Elves, whose forest was transplanted there by the overlay, and the Keldan forces of the warlord Aster. Then the 9 Planeswalkers travel to Phyrexia itself, planning to destroy it with soul bombs. The soul bombs were extremely powerful explosive devices built by Urza based on Thran design. The only way of fueling them was by capturing souls. Barin had argued that there was no ethical way to charge the devices, as he believed that no mortal crime could be severe enough to merit the immortal punishment of being used to fuel the bombs, and that the number of mortal souls necessary to power the devices was monstrous. However, Urza instead found a single immortal soul powerful enough to charge them. Their fight into Phyrexia goes well until Tevesh Zot betrays them, killing Christina of the Woods and Daria. It turns out Urza intentionally included Tevesh Zot as one of the 9 Titans, predicting that Zot would in some way betray the group. Once Zot lived up to these expectations by murdering Daria and Christina of the Woods, Urza felt justified in activating the kill rubric in Zot's Titan engine, fueling all the bombs with the Planeswalker's life essence. On Urborg, Agnet and his Metathran forces are caught in quicksand, but are saved by the undead of a Lich Lord named Dralnu. Dralnu tells Agnet of his underground city in which he gives fallen warriors a second chance at life. Agnet is awed by this, and they forge an alliance against the Phyrexians. In Keld, the battle fares badly. The Keldan twilight comes true, as all fallen heroes in the Keldan necropolis come back to life, but they fight for Phyrexia instead of Keld. This ship takes Eladamri, Lin Civi, and a host of elves and Keldans to Urborg. While Agnet is in Dralnu's underground city of Velnish to forge the alliance, the Battle of Urborg fares badly. The Weatherlight heads to Herlun to pick up reinforcements. They save an entire Minotaur army from the mutations Tongarth had to go through in Wrath, and brings them to Urborg. When Agnet and Dralnu return to the battlefield as well, the battle for southern Urborg is quickly won, and the forces head north to the stronghold. But Agnet turns out to be dying of what he thinks is the Phyrexian plague. During a battle, Agnet and the Minotaur commander Grizzlegom are injured. While in the sickbay, it is revealed Agnet does not have the Phyrexian plague, but a separate one caused by Dralnu, who wants to take over his army. Agnet signs over his forces to Grizzlegom, who then kills the Metatron commander, and then kills Dralnu. The Predator attacks the Weatherlight. Tongarth duels with Grevenin and Vec, and in a massively dramatic battle, slays the Phyrexian general. Cisse then sends the disabled Predator crashing into the stronghold. But just when they think the battle is won, a Phyrexian who had made himself invisible reveals his presence. Ertai. The mage grabs Gerard and Squee and teleports them into the stronghold. There they meet Krovax, who promises Gerard that Yawgmoth could bring Hannah back from the dead if he joins Phyrexia. To prove it, he then kills Squee and is then brought back to life. He would be able to be killed repeatedly by Ertai and Krovax for their entertainment. While Urza is in Phyrexia, he is grasped by its beauty. Yawgmoth plays into this feelings, convincing Urza to join his side and destroy the Master Soul Bomb that was supposed to set off all the others. Taysir, grieving for the loss of Christina, grew mutinous, and when Urza's sympathy with Phyrexia made him switch allegiances, Taysir attacked him. However, Urza activated the kill rubric in Taysir's Titan engine, slaying the Planeswalker where he stood. Yawgmoth then shows Urza his brother, Mishra, saying he has been tortured in Phyrexia ever since the brothers' war. Urza still wants to join Phyrexia, and so leaves his brother to his torture and presents himself before Yawgmoth. In the stronghold, Gerard independently pledges his allegiance to Yawgmoth as well, so he can bring Hannah back to life. The Weatherlight then drives Croesus, a giant dragon that had been slaying Dominarian and Phyrexian alike, back into his tar pit, but crashes in the process. The crew looks at their ship, thinking that it's all over, but Karn emerges with the Thran tome, saying he knows what he has to do to save the world. In Phyrexia, Gerard and Urza, Dominaria's greatest protectors, have turned on their allies and joined Yawgmoth's side. Their new master creates a massive arena which he fills with countless avatars of himself and has Gerard and Urza fight, promising to fulfill the greatest wish of the winner. Urza wishes to study artifice with Yawgmoth, and Gerard wants Hannah to be returned from the dead. On Dominaria, Karn reveals that breaking his oath of pacifism has cracked his memory cap. He can now access all of his memories, something he was unable to do before, and he begins to know things he shouldn't possibly know, even with his memory restored. He has the crashed Weatherlight merge with the Thran Tome, and the flying ship is reborn as a sentient creature. Bolivar, Commander Guff, Freylis, and Lord Windgrace discover Urza's treachery, Tasir's death, and the destruction of the Master Soul Bomb. They then decide to set off their soul bombs manually. Now that the Weatherlight has become sentient, Moltani can no longer live in its wood unhampered. He travels back to his home in Yavimaya, on his way discovering that Benalia, Llanowar, and even the merfolk countries under the sea have all fallen under Phyrexian forces. Yavimaya is safe, but Moltani realizes it's only a matter of time before it too is overwhelmed. He decides to take the initiative and transplants a large chunk of Yavimaya onto Urborg. Krovax leaves his throne room to fight, but is overwhelmed by Yavimayan forces. He flees to regroup his army. Aided by the new arrivals in Yavimaya, Eladamri, Lincivi, and Grizzlegom try to find a back door into the stronghold. While they don't necessarily find it, they do discover a group of dwarves who are planning to blast a tunnel towards the stronghold and activate the dormant volcano in which it is situated. In Phyrexia, the epic duel between Gerard and Urza begins. However, this far into Phyrexia has sapped Urza from most of his planeswalker powers, and Gerard, with his extensive training, wins the duel by decapitating Urza. Yawgmoth rewards him by tenfolding his strength, endurance, knowledge, and will, but Gerard only wants to see Hannah, his love. Yawgmoth sends one of his avatars, one that looks exactly like Hannah, to Gerard, but he sees through the deception and attacks it. Yawgmoth had, for some reason, placed his true essence in the form, thinking Gerard would never harm it, and in a knee-jerk reaction, Yawgmoth flung Gerard and Urza's head, which he was still holding, out of Phyrexia. Gerard ends up in the throne room of the stronghold, where he is reunited with Squee. The two of them defeat the Phyrexian troops inside, and Ertai realizes he cannot defeat Gerard and summons Krovax back to the stronghold. While Gerard and Squee fight Ertai and Krovax, the dwarves blast their way into the volcano. The coalition forces invade the place, and so does the Weatherlight after having located Squee on their scanners. Gerard kills Krovax with an axe, and Squee messes with the controls of a rejuvenation chamber, which ended up frying Ertai, and then all the Dominarian forces in the stronghold are reunited and leave in the Weatherlight just before the dwarves engulf the place in lava. The 4 remaining members of the 9 Titans set off the last of the soul bombs, gutting the plane of Phyrexia itself. But Guff reveals that Yawgmoth has already left the plane, planning to make Dominaria his new home. Yawgmoth returns to Dominaria after 9,000 years in the form of a death cloud, killing the living and resurrecting the dead to fight for Phyrexia, including Barin and Hannah. The Weatherlight drops off all warriors on the Urborgan battlefield except for the main crew. Then they see Yawgmoth arrive in his new form, but they have no idea how to fight it. Urza, or rather his head, which Gerard had been carrying around all this time, reveals that he is still alive because he's a pre-mending planeswalker, and says he wants to open the power matrix of the Weatherlight to recreate Sarah's realm on Dominaria. This will most likely devastate an entire hemisphere of Dominaria, but at least the other half will live. but Karn tells of the null moon, which has been gathering white mana ever since it was brought into orbit 9,000 years ago. Weatherlight plane shifts to that moon and gathers the mana within, planning to kill Yawgmoth by channeling it. Eladamri and Linsivy and their host of surviving Keldans and elves set off to do what they could to stop the carnage. They tried to save the Maggoth treefolk that were being suffocated as the soil that normally nourished them had risen and covered their leaves. The Keldans made fire to turn mudmen into pottery, while Sivy and the elves climbed the trees and pulled the creatures onto the flames below. This plan succeeded in having the Maggoths from the mudmen, but soon they were struck down as Yawgmoth and his death cloud broke free of the volcano and began descending across the world. Eladamri and Linsivy found themselves stuck between the descending cloud and the fires below them. The two, who had gradually fallen in love across their many battles together, decided to defy Yawgmoth one last time by choosing to fall to their deaths rather than let him kill them. The entire Minotaur and Metathran armies on Urborg are killed by the cloud, save for a small group which includes Grizzlegum that was saved by Lord Windgrace just in time. Bo Levar sacrifices his life to prevent the artist colony of the Elitarians from ever falling into Phyrexian hands. The Weatherlight returns and launches the legacy weapon. Yawgmoth tries to flee through the portal in the stronghold to control his undead forces from a safe place, but finds the portal and the rest of the stronghold covered in lava. He turns around and starts to fight the blasts from the weapon. Yawgmoth overcomes the blast and turns himself into giant tentacles that grab the Weatherlight. The ship's sentience is gone. It died from the strains of focusing the legacy weapon. Just as it seems that they're all done for, Urza has Gerard remove his Power Stone eyes and place them into Karn's chest. This creates a radiant light that just keeps expanding and absorbs all part of the legacy in it. Urza, Gerard, and Karn first. The true legacy weapon had been completed. The Weatherlight crew jumps off the ship just before it is too late. Nobody's sure what happens, but the light defeated Yawgmoth, and all Phyrexian forces are virtually brain-dead from the feedback of their god's death. All over Dominaria, the last survivors take the invaders apart with the greatest ease. It is a coalition victory. 1 year later, in a ceremony attended by the survivors from all over the globe, Freyalise erects a monument for the fallen where Krovax's estate had once been. After the ceremony, Squee and Tongarth join Cisse on her new ship, but Orym reveals she has made other plans. Karn suddenly appears next to her. The golem reveals that he is an accumulation of entire legacy, including Urza and Gerard. After a joyful but short reunion, Karn leaves to bring Orym back to Mercadia, where she has made plans to marry Cho Mano. Cisse, Squee, and Tangarth set out on new journeys in their new ship, which they dub the Victory. And with that, we end the tale of the Weatherlight crew. It's so sad that they killed so many off. It's a happy ending. It's like, ah. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Be sure to check out the other ones that I've made. Thank you guys all for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you all for watching this episode of MTG Mastery. If you guys are interested in any of the other videos in this series, whether it be lore, draft strategies, pack analysis, or the pack openings themselves, go ahead and click on the annotations now to be taken to playlists with the full list of all uploaded content of that type. Thank you guys all for watching. Rate, comment, and subscribe.